Thank you.
And the president-elect may already be preparing a backup plan. Two sources tell NBC News Trump is considering other options for the Pentagon if Hegseth falters, including Florida Governor and Navy veteran Ron DeSantis. Trump talked to the governor and wants him to do it, a source familiar with the conversation told NBC News. Trump and DeSantis once primary rivals.
I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star.
And it's time for Ron DeSantis to hang it up.
But DeSantis ultimately endorsing Trump.
He's been prosecuted and he nearly lost his life. We cannot let him down, and we cannot let America down.
Some top Trump allies now in a holding pattern.
My presumption is I'll support whoever he wants. It's not 100% clear to me who he wants as Secretary of Defense right now.
One other interesting note, Hegseth's team tells NBC News that he has reached out to Senator Tim Kaine for a meeting. That is the first we have heard of Hegseth meeting with a Democrat. Hegseth is not the only Trump pick whose past may come back to haunt him. People on both sides of the aisle are now concerned about things said by Kash Patel. No surprise, Trump's pick for FBI director. The sticking point could be Patel's claim last year that he would, quote, come after journalists. Several aides, as well as senators, told The Hill that Tulsi Gabbard, well, she might also have a tough road, even the toughest road of confirmation out of all three of those. And Trump's pick for director of national intelligence, of course, she has raised red flags with senators because of her past foreign policy dealings and her trustworthiness. Also, Peter Navarro, remember that guy? He is headed back to the White House. Well, he was in Trump's first administration. Then he went to jail, and now he is headed back to Trump's next White House, where he says he'll be a top trade advisor, which was similar to his role in the first White House. Remember, this man spread debunked lies about the 2020 election, and it was 4 months that he spent in prison for defying a subpoena in the January 6th committee. All right, with that, let's get smarter tonight with the help of our leadoff panel. Sam Stein is here, managing editor for The Bulwark and MSNBC political contributor. MSNBC senior political analyst Matthew Dowd. He is also a former George W. Bush strategist and founder of Country Over Party. And David Drucker, senior writer at The Dispatch and author of the book In Trump's Shadow. All right, Sam, let's start with Pete Hegseth. He is putting on a full court press to save his nomination. In the last 24 hours, we hadn't heard from him over the last week, but suddenly his former Fox News colleagues seem to be in his corner and pretty vocal. But this thing looks like it's getting tougher and tougher. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, the two things are related. It's tough, and that's the reason he's going in the full court press, right? For a while, Hegseth, like all the other nominees, has basically done this with private meetings one-on-one with senators, trying to get their support, knowing he can only lose 3. But as these conversations, as these reports have dripped out painfully for him, his team recognized that they had to either, ramp up the pressure on Republican senators, or they were going to lose the nomination. Last night was a key turning point when reports emerged from the NBC, Wall Street Journal, my colleagues at The Bulwark, that Trump has actually talked to Ron DeSantis. Look, that doesn't come out unless the Trump team lets it come out and wants it to be known that they have other options. It's a signal to senators that, hey, we might have someone else here for you. And Hegseth has responded today by just going highly aggressively on the Hill, even having his mother call in, which is lovely. People should have mothers supporting them. But it just shows that sort of the desperation that's taken hold within his camp. And look, obviously, the salacious stories are a problem for a lot of senators. But frankly, this is not as discussed. But another problem we're hearing from the Hill is that people are just not sure he has the capacity or the resume to handle a 3 million person bureaucracy. I mean, that is a huge hurdle for a lot of these lawmakers as well.
Okay, David, I'm not correcting Sam, but I want to put it in context. This wasn't just Pete Hegseth's mom going on Fox News to say, gosh, my son is swell. She went on to do serious damage control, right? Pete Hegseth thinks women should not be in combat, but he is A-OK with his mom going on Fox News to try to clean up the mess from an email she sent to him 7 years ago, really going after him about his conduct, about the way he treats women in general, his wife, his family. Now, in the interview, she said she retracted saying those things. 2 hours later, she sent an apology email, though we have not seen it, even though we've seen the whole first email. The one that she talked about did not materialize. So she did go on TV. She did defend her son. David, do you think it helped him in any way?
Well, listen, time will tell. I think Sam gets to an important point here, is that there are doubts about Pete Hegseth and his ability to do the job that go beyond, his personal peccadillos. And I think an interesting dynamic has emerged here in the Senate. Obviously, Republicans don't want to get into a tete-a-tete with Trump. They don't want to be on the wrong side of a tweet or some other social media post. So they're quiet publicly. They say that they're going to support whoever the president puts up if there's a floor vote, and they let the information in public pile up, and then they see if the nomination collapses under its own weight. It's what happened with Matt Gaetz, although a lot quicker than what is happening with Pete Hegseth. And maybe this won't fall apart. Maybe he will be able to save it. But when you're already working this hard before you've met with senators, before you've had your committee hearing, you're in a really tough spot.
Okay, Matthew, then let's talk about suddenly Ron DeSantis's name is in the mix. This is a guy who's had, a complicated past with Donald Trump. What's more important to Trump? Super loyalty, which he will clearly get from Hegseth, or an administration with the likes of Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance. It's like he's casting the next season of The Presidential Apprentice.
Well, I mean, I think if Donald Trump's priority is super all the time, all the way loyalty, then if that doesn't work, then if you attacked him, then as long as you crawl back, you're fine. I mean, Marco Rubio said as bad as things about Donald Trump that Ron DeSantis did, and so did J.D. Vance, actually. And J.D. Vance got picked as his VP. He crawled back, got picked, and Marco Rubio's the nominee for Secretary of State, who's likely to get bipartisan support and probably should get bipartisan support in this nomination process. So I just think this shows Donald Trump is taking the wrong message from Election Day. I actually think he's taking the wrong message from Election Day. Donald Trump, in his own mind, thinks it was a mandate when he won by less than, if you switched to 0.75% of vote, 100,000 voters, he would have lost. And if you had switched 7,000 voters in the United States of House of Representatives, the Democrats would be in control of the House. And I think this is another example. And I actually think Democrats are taking the wrong message from this election and what happened in the course of this. I don't think the voters out there who gave Trump the win, the small amount of voters out there, thought this is what they were getting. I think they thought they were going to get was competent people that would know how to run the government and provide them services that they need, and that they would simultaneously do something about inflation and do something about the border. And so I think Donald Trump, in his hurry up to pack his cabinet with these loyal group of people that'll do his bidding in this, I think is way overreaching in this. And to me, that's what's much more problematic for him, I think, than Matt Gaetz falling down the wayside, which I actually think is good news. We have enough Republicans in the Senate that said it's not competent, and likely that Pete Hegseth's sell-by date is pretty much approaching, and he'll fall by the wayside, not because of Democrats, but because of Republicans think he's not competent enough or has the character to do this. But as I say, it's an example of a very close election and the president taking the wrong message away from the election.
All right, but competent with some of these other people, how? When it comes to what? Look at Kash Patel, right? We've heard lots of Republicans, especially Donald Trump, over the last 7-8 years, complain, attack, go after the media. But Patel's comments last year say he really wants to physically go after the media, punish the media, sink the media. Could that be too much for Republicans? Yes, there's always a push-pull relationship for the free press, covering these politicians. But to target journalists, that's something very different, Sam.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem, right? The thing is, Trump really just wants loyalists in these positions. And he wants people who are going to, in his mind, reform the institutions. But really, it's sort of disband them and recreate them as tools for his presidency. And Kash Patel, for that reason, is like the perfect, ideal nominee for Trump, right? He doesn't look at the FBI as an institution that's independent of the president. He looks at the FBI as an institution that's there to carry out the president's vision. And so, the question really that we're asking is, how much will the Senate Republican caucus stomach, right? They stood up and said no to Matt Gaetz. They did so privately. None of them had to take a vote. I think that's very important. It looks like they might do the same for Pete Hegseth. But at some point, they're going to calculate that it's not worth the political capital, precisely because, and you're already seeing it, a lot of Trump allies are out there right now saying, if you vote against Hegseth, if you vote against Patel, we will give you and we will support a primary challenger to you. It's been very illustrative that Tom Tillis, one of the more moderate-minded Republican senators who is up for election this cycle, has basically said today he will support any nominee who makes it through committee. And that's because he knows very well that if he weren't to do that, he would get a primary challenger with the backing of Donald Trump.
Country first. All right, let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard, David. She wants to be in charge of national intelligence. And now she's being questioned about her trustworthiness, her loyalty. That seems like a massive problem. Some people on the Hill have said she's going to have the toughest time getting confirmed. What do you think?
Well, I think she's going to have a lot of questions to answer, and I think there'd be a lot more scrutiny of her already, if not for some of these other nominees and the attention that they're getting. Look, she is somebody that has met with Bashar al-Assad, the brutal dictator in Syria, and parroted his propaganda. She's parroted Putin's Russian propaganda. And her views on intel and on American foreign policy, I think, are going to come under a strong look from Republican senators who simply do not agree with her on these matters and are very concerned about what she has had to say in the past. And I think it's going to take some time for them to sift through some of these other nominees and get around to thinking about her, meeting with her, and seeing exactly how she explains what she has said in the past, her actions in the past. And, you know, we'll see if she can dig her way out of this. But here's somebody who number one, just doesn't look at these issues the same way Republicans do. And then she's got these issues of trust, which make it very difficult for her to get through. But again, you know, there's this pre-period here. Then there is a committee hearing if you get to it. And then there's the floor. And so I think we have to take these one at a time before we sort of conclude prematurely whether somebody's going to pass or fail.
But of course, she doesn't look at these issues the way Republicans or Democrats do. Before we go, Matthew, I do want to ask you about a Republican you know very well, Senator Mitt Romney. He gave his farewell speech on the Senate floor, and he had this warning for his fellow colleagues. Watch this. Nope, that's Kash Patel.
There are some today who would tear at our unity, who would replace love with hate, who deride our foundation of virtue, or who debase the values upon which the blessings of heaven depend. A country's character is a reflection not just of its elected officials, but also of its people. I leave Washington to return to be one among them, and hope to be a voice of unity and virtue.
Once Romney leaves, Matthew, what is your thought, really? How many Republicans are left in Washington who will publicly go against Trump?
Well, we found out there was more than a lot of people thought. And I think that's why before we prejudge what's going to happen in this and that say that Donald Trump completely controls the Republican Party in this, I think we're finding out that's not 100% true. We found out there wasn't enough Republicans to get Matt Gaetz through. We're probably finding out that there's not enough Republicans to get Pete Hegseth through. There may not be enough Republicans to get Tulsi Gabbard through. And I think Mitt Romney